Welcome to Conversate, our podcast where we engage in conversation. And on this week's episode, Aaron and Kevin are talking about Holy Week and all of the things that God has in store for us from Palm Sunday all the way to Easter Sunday. And in this conversation, we're going to address a number of those things, but ultimately our hope in this conversation is what our hope is. Our hope is in Jesus Christ, crucified and risen from the dead. May your eyes be on him. And as always, our goal is that you will take something from this conversation and go start another spiritual conversation with somebody else. As always, we hope you enjoy it. Hey, morning, bud.
Hey, morning.
A blessed Holy Week to you.
Thank you. Yes, blessed 2025. Great week to you as well.
In the Lord.
In the Lord. Oh, man. I see I'm out of practice. Someone said something comparable to me recently, and it reminded me of saying that every day. And I missed it just a little bit.
So, I was asked yesterday, or a couple of days ago, or a couple of years ago, depending on when you listen to this.
Yes, indeed.
I forget. It was during the Sunday morning Bible class, and we were looking at the different Herods.
Okay. Yep.
So
Yep.
there's this whole different. So there's Herod the Great, and then he ruled. He was the king of the Jew, king of Israel, and then when he died, it was all split up into three of his sons.
Okay.
Ruled different regions, and Herod Antipas is the one that we hear most often.
Right.
But the point is that Herod the Great, he ruled until 4 BC.
Okay.
And then his sons took over in 4 BC. But I mentioned that Herod the Great was the one who was there at the beginning of Jesus' life. And that's the one that the wise men came to see.
Right.
And then they wanted to kill Jesus. And somebody was like, wait a second, but 4 BC,
right?
How could that be when Jesus was born? And I dropped the mind bender that not a lot of people know, is that Jesus was not born in 0.
That's right. That's right.
Likely 5 to 6 BC. So,
and how do they? I mean, I guess saying geopolitical considerations is one thing, like Herod the Great being in power when he was, and knowing that that's the Herod that issued the slaughter of the innocents.
Yeah, and then our calendar. Oh man! So the Western, or the calendar that we all use now. I'm not even gonna. Somebody go look it up, because I know something about this, but I'm gonna say 90% of things wrong.
Just say it wrong, and our followers, our audience, they'll get back to us. They'll send it in the show notes.
You know what we need? You know what would be crazy when AI gets so good is that as we are speaking, it takes my voice and
modulates it,
autocorrects into factual information.
Oh man, wouldn't that be something?
That would be. I just thought of that idea.
Yeah,
I bet something like that'll come.
That's like the movie Liar Liar.
Really?
Well, have you seen it, Jim Carrey?
Yeah, but it's been a long time.
Yeah, well, the premise of that movie is he can't speak lies.
Oh.
But he doesn't want that to be reality for him, so he tries to at various points when he discovers what's happening, but he can't. And he's just forced to say what is actually true. And it, hilarity ensues.
There you go.
Yeah, quite the premise.
That's quite the premise. I do not want
AI to have that capacity.
No. I mean, it's fascinating to think about.
It sure is. The bigger question would be Pilate's question. What is truth?
You said pilot. I was thinking about an airplane.
Oh, gotcha.
Sorry.
How do we land this thing?
I still wondered what question does the pilot ask?
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. I knew what you meant. But
So Jesus is born pre-0. Yep. And then AD, sometimes people think it stands for after death.
Yeah, it does not.
It does not. What does BC stand for, though?
Before Christ.
It does.
Yeah.
Okay. Which is different than now people use like BCE and ACE for common era.
Well, not ACE. They use BCE before Common Era.
Oh, and then just CE.
And then CE for Common Era.
We are in the Common, which is still funny because it still rotates around or hinges upon the birth
Yes.
or the life, at least, of Jesus. But AD doesn't stand for after death. It's Latin for Anno Domini,
Yeah.
right? The year of our Lord, 2025.
There you go. All right. Now that we got that out of the way,
Yes, thank you. Good.
what do you want to talk about? Holy Week?
Yeah, that would be cool. Yeah,
All of Holy Week?
We're in it. We're in it. It's happening.
Yeah. This is that's my favorite time of the year. I think, like church-wise, church season-wise.
Liturgical calendar.
I like the, I don't know. I mean, the dramatic
Absolutely.
movement of, from Palm Sunday, of like this kind of joyous experience, I guess,
For sure.
to then Maundy Thursday, kind of this intimate deal with his disciples, to Good Friday, which is, horrific in many ways,
Right.
to the joys of Easter. I mean, it's
Roller coaster of emotions.
Yeah.
I was actually asking the 7th and 8th graders on Sunday, like what their favorite parts, of Holy Week are,
okay.
like which days in particular. And Easter was a big one. And then we said, okay, well, let's take that one out. And then what do you pick? And Palm Sunday, Good Friday, Maundy Thursday is kind of the dark horse, I think.
Yeah.
I think of all the days, it maybe is the one that might get like a little overlooked, but obviously incredibly significant, being the night in which Jesus institutes the thing we do weekly, or every other week if you come to one service here at our church.
Well, yeah, and I think if you took the amount of textual material in the scriptures, in terms of how much text is devoted to things that happen on Thursday, it's actually probably most on. I think I don't know for sure, but
I think only though if you have an American idea of what a day is.
Okay.
I recently thought of this. This is like a legit a new idea for me, and it's only because so just for if you're listening and you're like, what are you even talking about? Jewish people started their day. The day began in the evening, which is why, like in Genesis, when you read the creation account, there was evening and there was morning the first day. So the Jewish day is evening to evening, basically, and so. It just really elongated Good Friday. I'd always thought of Good Friday as, it starts at, 12:01.
Oh, I suppose Good Friday is really long because a lot of that happens after sunset on what we call Thursday.
That's right. Basically after and even the meal itself, I'm not sure like what standard Jewish meal times are. But I think usually the Sabbath started with a meal. So like the evening meal would be the beginning of the new day. If I'm not mistaken. So like when they're in the upper room, they're starting Friday.
Yeah.
Yeah, in a Jewish kind of mindset anyway.
Wait, sir, you telling me Maundy Thursday is actually Maundy Friday?
Well, when does he give that command? Does he give it in the nighttime?
Yeah. Well,
I don't know when he gives it. Because Maundy,
I mean, it's when they're in the upper room together. So,
so maybe
I don't know if
it's
sun
post-dinner.
had set yet. Well, it's John 13, and the
Right.
meal is John something later.
I'm not sure. Is the meal? I don't know if the meal is recorded. We get the words of institution in the other Gospels, but not in. It might still mention
not in
it.
John.
That's right. You Gospels always shrouded in mystery. You are. But all this to say, what we're talking about are the events of the last week of Jesus' life, his earthly life prior to his resurrection. And it's a huge week in the church because it's a huge week even in the Gospels. I mean, the Gospels talk about the events of this week with great detail and great attention. And so like if you're looking at the expanse of Scripture, the Gospels about Jesus' life, it's completely disproportionate how much time is spent thinking about the events of this particular week. And like you said, the drama is really, it's heavy. There's a lot of stuff going on. There's a lot of little narratives going on.
Yeah. And so Palm Sunday kicks off the whole thing, right? And Jesus was outside of Jerusalem, like a mile and a half, I think it was. Was he in Bethphage or Bethany?
Yep, both of those right in the area.
Yeah.
It mentions both.
So that they go down. So so it's like up on a hillside, and then they go down through the Kidron Valley, and then back uphill into Jerusalem. And so,
Well, and I think he pit stops at the Mount of Olives as well, right?
on that day.
On that day, which is really interesting. I don't know if he stops there while the disciples wrangle the colt, the little donkey. But the Mount of Olives is also a very significant place for Jesus. And you can look at pictures of this. It's pretty cool. From the Mount of Olives, you have this amazing view of Jerusalem, the temple, basically right where Jesus is headed. It's like, oh, you can see it.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
It's ominous.
So lots of foreshadowing by being up on that Mount of Olives. But yeah, then he rides down the Mount of Olives and then into Jerusalem.
Yeah, and we get with the four gospels. They all have their own little take on it, but they all mention it. They all mention Palm Sunday.
Yeah.
But we get different flares, different words being said and captured. So it was interesting. I was thinking about it because we've been reading through Luke this Lent, and the word on Palm Sunday that we always shout out, Hosanna, 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 actually is not in Luke's gospel.
Not even in there at all.
So a little bit of a bummer.
Yeah, we threw it in anyway. We like it, so we threw it in for Palm Sunday.
Yeah, but that's the traditional word, I guess, that is spoken or chanted, Hosanna in the highest, and that's a word that means save us or save us now, which is it's fascinating. Like again, we've been reading through Luke, so that's what's fresh on my mind. But like in Luke's gospel, it just feels like all of a sudden on this day, like boom, now he's our king. Like because it was, we just talked about it. Was it last week? The Zacchaeus story. So it's Zacchaeus and in his house, and then now here we go. And
I was just trying to think about that king word. Like that's not really uttered by too many people prior to this moment. Hey,
no,
yeah,
and so it just makes you wonder, like, what is it? What signifies it to them? The whole riding in on a donkey.
Yeah.
From what I've read and taught in the past, like kings usually would ride like into towns after a victorious battle on a horse, except for kings of Israel, would ride in on a donkey. So
yeah, one thing I'd heard about a difference between the horse and the donkey too is that like if you had just conquered a town, the king would ride the horse, the war horse, to basically show dominance. But if a king was coming into like his hometown, then he would ride the donkey, because the idea was, yeah, I'm not here to conquer. Like, I'm the benevolent king. I have your, approval, your praise, which Jesus does on the way in, at least from the multitude, not everybody, but the multitude. And he is, this is the hometown hero, man,
Yeah.
He's going to go into his father's house.
Except the followers are hoping for something to happen, I guess.
Right.
We don't know if they're thinking militant victory. I think in some ways they are thinking that.
Yeah.
The disciples have sort of alluded to this in the past.
Right. You can make a strong case for that, certainly.
So they, they expect Jesus to be the king who will overthrow the Romans or something like that, and be that perfect king of Israel who will rule and reign over, a united kingdom forever and ever. But obviously Jesus is coming in a different kind of way.
Well, and that's part of what the narrative of Holy Week tells us, right? So we get to Thursday, and now all of a sudden we're getting more of Jesus' explanation about what he's here to do, who he actually is, what his ministry is about. Again, this is not something we'll get in Luke, but in the Gospel of John in particular, we get the very famous washing of the disciples' feet, right, on Maundy Thursday, and this idea that I have come not as master, not as king as you understand it, but actually my mission and ministry is going to be, it's going to take the form of servitude and servanthood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now were you saying Monday, Thursday?
No, Monday.
Well, it's not Monday, Thursday?
It's not Monday, Thursday, so it's not.
Ah.
Yeah, we're not talking about two different days in one day. It's not Thursday, Friday either.
I used to think that as a kid. I'm like, I don't understand what Monday, Thursday is.
No, well, and honestly, I don't know that anyone explained it to me until I came here, because I know you've made a point on like Monday, Thursday, on that particular day.
I'd say it all the time because I think people. I mean, nobody knows and people forget. So.
Well, yeah, it's exactly. I mean, who of us is like reading Latin? You know,
Right?
It is Latin, right? Yeah. And why don't you just tell us?
Well, yeah. So John 13:34, Jesus says, "A new command I give to you, that you love one another." So he's saying to his disciples, love one another, a new command. So in Latin, the word for command is the word mandatum, whereby we get the word Maundy, 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 Thursday.
Maundy.
So
it's Commandment Thursday.
yeah, Commandment Thursday.
Yeah.
And it's really about, the love one another. So yeah, a lot of times we directly associate, and rightly so, that Maundy Thursday is all about the institution of the Lord's Supper, which it is. I mean, that's a huge part of it. But also, as you already mentioned, John's gospel tells us about the washing of the disciples' feet.
Yep.
So there's a lot going on. I mean, Thursday, again, as we kind of keep time in our American understanding, is also when Peter denies Jesus, Judas betrays Jesus. They go out to the Garden of Gethsemane to pray. Again, to your point, in Jewish timing, that would be after dark, and so that would actually be technically Friday.
Right. And I kind of like it just because it's like, then Thursday, it really sticks with that kind of intimate, this like love relationship between Jesus and his disciples, this teaching, this institution of the Holy Supper. It's not kind of the same high point as Sunday where it's like everyone's like, woo. But for the disciples, like, this is very special. This is very sacred, but positive until right at the end of the supper, as soon as Jesus says, and my betrayer's hands on the table with me, kind of thing. And all of a sudden it takes this weird dark turn. And that's really what leads us right into then Good Friday, which the whole theme of that day, as you said earlier, is it's just sad.
Yeah.
It's terrible. It's gruesome. It's brutal. It's dark. Yeah.
So after the supper, though, they go out to the Garden of Gethsemane, which is back. It's on that Mount of Olives. So they go back out. They're praying, and Judas has left to go betray Jesus and get paid. So that, remember, the crowd, like the religious leaders, have been trying to find a way to get Jesus, to trap him, trick him, figure out how to snatch him, and they've wanted to, but for fear of the crowds, they couldn't do it. And so there's some of this conniving, that Judas will let those religious leaders know, like, hey, I know where Jesus is staying. You can go snatch him in the middle of the night, kind of. So here, bonus little trivia. So they're out there in the Garden of Gethsemane, and all four Gospels say that when Judas comes with some of the soldiers and a servant of the high priest, that one of the disciples cuts off the ear of the disciple. Luke gives us a fun detail that nobody else gives us. Do you know about what happens here?
Oh, about what Jesus does in response? Yeah, so Jesus doesn't just leave that servant wounded. Kind of two things happen, right? Jesus rebukes his disciples, one, but then he heals.
Yeah.
He heals. What a shock.
Yeah.
What a strange thing. You imagine that. You've come with your motive, your intent. You've got your clubs and your swords. You're here to take the guy in. Immediately, trouble goes down. And then the guy you're here to capture heals one of your own. And then they just move on.
I know.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to take you anyway.
Yeah. I mean, Jesus will allude to this evening in this particular hour. He'll talk about like the hour of darkness, or the hour of the power of darkness. And there really is. I mean, that's like an episode right there that just shows kind of it's like the fullest form of the hardness of heart that we can have as human people. And you can think of episodes like non-biblical episodes where this same dynamic gets lived out, where it's like, what? Like, how could you? You know what I mean? Like, how could you do this? And this seems like one of those instances where it's like Jesus is demonstrating who he is, even here in this moment, as light, and they don't care. Mm-hmm. And take him in anyway.
Yeah.
So then the shepherd of the sheep is struck, and the flock scatters. All the disciples, they beat it. They get out of there.
Yeah.
One guy loses his clothes somehow. that little detail's not in Luke. I think it's in Mark, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah. And then things are quiet, right? Well, Friday, obviously, Jesus is crucified. Things are quiet on Saturday, being that it's the Sabbath. Nothing happens. And Jesus also rests on that Sabbath day.
And that's the Sabbath that would have begun the Passover festival as well then. Is that right?
Well, they would have, no, I mean, Passover is the week long. So that Sabbath would have
Preceded it.
That Sabbath would have been rounding out.
Is that right? They were already, my thought was that they were preparing to celebrate the Passover, like leading up to, and so like on the day, like because I'm trying to think the day of unleavened bread, which is called the Passover. Like in Luke's gospel, we get some of these.
That's what Jesus is celebrating on Thursday with them.
Well, that's a good point.
Yeah. So that's when I believe that's when the people collectively were doing celebrating the actual meal.
Yeah,
but it's a week long.
Exactly.
It's a week long festival.
Right.
And I believe it went like Sunday to Sunday.
Yeah. So Sabbath's Saturday to Saturday,
yeah.
Right? So Palm Sunday would have been part of the festival, essentially.
Yeah.
Okay. I hadn't thought about that, which is interesting because I think on Palm Sunday, as Jesus is riding in, there's some singing like that. We always hear "Blessed is the King," comes in the name of the Lord, but that actually comes from the Psalms. Right?
Yeah, and that was one of those Psalms of ascent as they would ascend up that hill towards the Temple Mount. They had these. So in the Psalms, there are, I think it might even be indicated in like the notations that there's these Psalms of ascent. So they would sing, as they're approaching the temple for these big festivals and stuff.
Yeah, and the one song that gets associated with Passover for the Jews is the Hallel, I think it's called. But that line, "Blessed is the King who comes in the name of the Lord," that falls in, I think Psalm 118 was part of like the liturgy of even that evening meal, but it's already showing up then on Sunday as Jesus enters. But it's okay. So we're in the midst of Passover. If you need a refresher on that, just go to Exodus, chapter 12-ish. The whole idea there, though, the lamb, its blood over the doorpost saves Israel. Here's Jesus basically enacting that same idea in that same week. But it's not a lamb. He's the lamb, and it's his blood on Friday that's spilt. And all of this is, this is wild. All of this is so layered in what's happening, And for us, I think we're a little bit of a disadvantage because it's like we don't practice Passover, But for the Jewish people, like it's such an interesting thing to think about. Someone who you imagine there could have been Jewish folk who are like sort of paying attention or listening. Certainly disciples, when they're at the table with Jesus. Jesus is pretty clear. Hey, I'm doing something different here,
Well, Passover for the Jewish people, that was. The reason they celebrated it every year, God told them after it happened, he instructed Moses that they were to celebrate the Passover every year,
right,
as a reminder of their deliverance. So
that's right.
So Passover was the salvation story for the Jewish people,
and still is for the Jewish people, to this day.
Yeah. So Passover is all about like God spared you, God saved you, right?
Yeah.
So the Passover happens, and then you cross the Red Sea where your enemy is drowned, and you have this new life on the other side of the Red Sea, heading to the Promised Land. Like it is a salvation story,
right? And the point of the Passover meal was to do it in remembrance of that.
Yeah.
Remembrance of that time.
Yeah.
When God did this in Egypt.
Right. And so what does Jesus say when he's instituting the Lord's Supper? Do this in remembrance of me. Right. And so, yeah, so many of these deep connections because obviously our salvation story is Jesus, right? Jesus dying and rising, right? Jesus crossing his own version of the Red Sea so that death might pass over us, right? So that the punishment would pass over us, and he would be the lamb that is slain, just like on Passover, the perfect the Passover lamb is to be a lamb without blemish.
That's right.
And yet there is no perfect lamb, even in this sinful world.
And I even learned from one of our elders that, so when they found that lamb, they would actually wrap it up in swaddling cloths and present it to the religious leaders to see if it was worthy for the sacrifice.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I'd
never heard that.
Seen that before.
Yeah.
All right, we're going on the word of one of our elders. So.
That's right. They're trustworthy.
We trust them. Yeah. Very cool. So many events, and we'll again talk next week. So we're gonna not go Easter.
Cliffhanger.
We're not gonna
crosshanger.
Yeah.
Jesus is a crosshanger, I guess.
Wow, yeah.
Technically
Yeah, he is. Yeah,
speaking.
He is. But I want to
cool.
come back to your Palm Sunday message a little bit. And so you were really kind of leaning into this rebuking idea, right?
Sure.
Like these people who, because Jesus, in Luke's gospel, he's coming into Jerusalem, and what was it? The religious leaders tell Jesus to rebuke his disciples.
That's right. The Pharisees. Yep.
Yeah. Tell him to stop doing this.
That's right.
It's interesting that rebuking, that shows up quite a few times in Luke's gospel. I was thinking back to when people are bringing their little children to Jesus, that he might bless them. It's actually the disciples who rebuke the parents, right? And they're like, no, stop, right? And Jesus has other things to do. There's the blind beggar on the way into Jericho, and he's crying out, and he gets rebuked, but he cries out even more.
That's right. And Jesus responds to his crying out.
Yeah.
Yep.
I was just reading this morning. It's there's another. It's on the cross. The thief. The thief rebukes the other
thief.
The other thief who's being executed. So one is mocking Jesus, and the one rebukes him. So it's there's just I don't know. I don't know if there's connections between all this rebuking going on, but it's I don't know.
Well, so rebuke. I had to look this up. Well, I was curious to look it up anyway, which is like, what does that mean? Because I don't use the word rebuke.
Well, we should.
We could. It's possible. But one of the definitions of it is to basically show like great disdain or displeasure at the behavior of somebody.
That makes sense.
Right? So if you think about it in that way, then a rebuke in some ways is going to give a bit of a framework for what someone values. Right? So, for the people who are rebuking the blind beggar, they had some idea about, I don't know, maybe who's worthy to approach Jesus. That's part of kind of their framework, their idea about who Jesus is. And it's like, buddy, look, you're not, okay? Hush, right? You're causing a scene. Don't bother the teacher. Same kind of thing with the disciples, with the little children. It's sort of like, Jesus didn't have time for you. So they have this construct of who Jesus is, what's valuable to him, and they're off. Both of those groups are off, but it sort of shows their own value system. For the Pharisees, the way I think about it is, for them, they're the ones in charge, if you will, when it comes to religious matters. They're the top dogs. And we know from the gospel stories, they really liked that. They liked having the best place, the seats of honor. They liked the having, esteem from the people. They cared more about the favor of men than of God. And so Jesus is getting all this praise and attention, and that is a threat to them. So they're going to rebuke because they're like, you are stepping on turf of something that's valuable to us, which is our standing, our place. And of course, Jesus, I mean, he says a word, it didn't say Jesus rebukes them, but he might as well have. Because, part of what Jesus is saying is, in telling us the whole way through, your whole conception of God is just distorted. It's misaligned. You're not seeing the heart of God. You're not understanding. And Jesus is trying to demonstrate this over and over to them, and they still don't get it. Now, Jesus, on the other hand, he rebukes a lot of things in the gospel. He rebukes the wind and the waves. The very thing that signaled to the disciples that Jesus didn't care about them. So the kinds of things that tell you that God doesn't care about you, that's the kind of thing that Jesus will rebuke, because that goes against his value system. He wants to demonstrate to you, no, God does care about you. He also kind of wants to expose, like, well, who do you think I am? You don't think I care about you guys? Come on.
Yeah. Oh, you of little faith.
That's right. Yeah. Jesus rebukes the demons. So when those... It's usually earlier in the Gospels, they show up and they say, hey, we know who you are. Jesus rebukes them. He silences them. The man who they encounter over in kind of Gentile territory in the Gerasenes, Jesus is already rebuking the demon that's in him, this demon that's causing him to self-harm. Jesus is rebuking him because that goes against his value system of what does God desire for us? Life, wholeness, wellness. So that's where, I made the point on Sunday, especially with our confirmands confessing their faith. When you do that, you're making a value statement. You're saying, this is what or who is important to me. And when you do that, well, people got different opinions.
Yeah, well, and I think, it's not the word rebuke, but like in our baptismal liturgy, and we don't ask the kids this question in confirmation, but do you renounce the devil in all his works, in all his ways?
That's right. Yeah.
So they acknowledge the gifts that God gave them in their baptism, which is right. But in the baptismal liturgy, it's do you renounce the devil in all his works and all his ways?
Yeah.
Yes, I renounce them. Do you believe in God the Father Almighty, maker of heaven and earth? Right, and confessing the creed. Yes, I believe. So we say no to the devil and all his works and all his ways, and we say yes to Jesus. And I think not by our own power, but by the power of Jesus Christ, who rules and reigns and is alive right now, and his Spirit is dwelling within us. We have this power to say no to the devil and his works and his ways.
Yeah.
I feel like only later in life I realized this reality. Now this doesn't mean that we're going to be perfect. This doesn't mean that we're going to be without sin. That's not what I'm claiming. But I feel like I used to have the mentality of sort of like, I guess I'm just a sinner.
Right. There's no war to wage here, really.
Yeah.
I'm just going to I'm going to blow over.
Yeah. And it's like, well, I guess I'll try not to sin, but I'm
on my own strength.
Yeah. But I'm going to anyway. And so I guess I'm grateful that Jesus forgives me. And it was just sort of that very just sort of passive across the whole board, like passive to sin. Like it's going to have its way with me, but then passive, in my receiving of grace. But we're really called scripturally to be quite active in our renouncing and our rebuking of the devil.
Right.
Passive in our receiving of grace and love in Jesus, but then, flee from sin, flee from sexual immorality, like the scriptures tell us. So again, this is not saying we're going to be able to be perfect people or without sin. That is Jesus. But the devil only really has power when we give him power.
That's right.
Like sin only has power over us when we sort of allow it to. And again, not by our own strength, but by the power of the Holy Spirit living within us. My point in saying this is we ought to be actively saying no to temptation, saying no to the devil, putting him in his place, saying, hey, you are a loser. You're the war has already been won. You are
Right.
conquered.
Right.
I belong to Jesus. Yes, you want to still do battle with me, but let me tell you something. You're a loser. So I'm not gonna play your games. I'm not gonna participate in your like stupid lies. Like,
Yeah.
so call it out, right? And say yes to Jesus and all the wonderful gifts that he gives. So
Yeah, this will be hard if you're listening to this. I'm going to use my hands, but here's the scheme of reality in terms of power, the hierarchy. So we're here. If you're listening, my hand is moving left and right at a fairly low height. And then you have the power of sin and the demons and the angels and the devil himself, because they're fallen angels and they're above us. So we're down here. They're here. But God is above them. Jesus is above them. The Spirit is above them. So in the hierarchy of power, the Trinity, it's not like it's two equal opposing forces.
right, Satan does not have equal power with God.
Exactly. And that's so important. That's so important to understand. This is why, that's the only way that Jesus comments in Matthew 16 makes sense, where he says, the kingdom of God is going to be established. It's going to advance, and the gates of hell won't prevail against it. Because that's how it works. God is the power, and Satan can't handle him. Even when Satan tries, which this is part of what the Great Week, Holy Week, is about, God just uses that for his own good purposes in the end. And that's the beautiful thing. So like even in your sin, even when you sin, see, it's possible for Satan to use that to alienate you from others, to alienate you from God. But see, by the power of the gospel, by the forgiveness we know we have in Christ, we can even use those opportunities to do what Paul talks about so often, which is boast in our weaknesses, boast in our failure, because it just demonstrates how good God is to us. So like even Satan's weapons can be flipped on their head and wielded for the sake of the gospel, which is, me down here on my level, I am powerless. But I've been inhabited by the one who has power over sin, Satan, and death itself.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, that was super cool that you, like, in your sermon on Palm Sunday, you brought in a quotation from Luther about like Satan being the best teacher of theology. And that's really cool, because you think about that and it's like, yeah, when have I been forced to engage with God, in my reality? It's probably in those times where I might be feeling the worst about the things that I've done, or the things I've left undone, or the
Some
tough stuff in life, and now those are the points where you cling to God, and it's like, oh, right. So
yeah, I like the saying in Christianity, the way up is down.
yeah.
And it's a little bit of a, like, that's hard for people to understand, especially outside of the church. People outside the church, it's like, why are you bothering with all that sin? Wow, so much negativity. It's like, no, not really. Yes, I mean, it is, sure. We have the most pessimistic view of human nature. But we also have the most optimistic view.
Yeah.
Because we have the power of God.
Yeah, all right.
Yeah. So it's not just let's be nice. Let's all be kind of okay with each other. No, the gospel has us reaching far higher than that.
Rebuke.
That's rebuking sin, rebuking the devil. Yeah. I mean, a change that's not just outward, but a change that's actually inward. That's far deeper than, kind of the social contract idea of like, let's just all get along. Yeah. The problem's too big, but the solution is also bigger than the problem. So,
And that solution is Jesus?
yeah.
All right. He gets the final word.
It's what he does
All right.
next week, which we will say.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. In case you don't know, he rises from the dead. Spoiler. Okay. Hey, have a blessed Holy Week, buddy.
Yeah,
and
you too.
it'll be a joy to lead God's people in worship.
Amen. Looking
All right.
forward to seeing you there.
All right, peace.